Summary of A Short History of Nearly Everything by Bill Bryson. In the beginning of A Short History of Nearly Everything, the author Bill Bryson expresses his happiness that the reader is able to accompany him. This is particularly true when considering the fact that the reader, just like every other living being, is only able to exist as a result of a lengthy chain of history that began with atoms and culminated in many forms of life. Life itself is a huge act of biological good fortune, since 99.99% of species go extinct and the survival of every species rests on a very specific past of good timing and luck. Bryson is also amazed by how scientists learn what they do, and he doesn't understand why a lot of science writing makes the past of scientific discoveries seem vague, dull, and hard to understand. Bryson says that he decided to write this book because he realized he doesn't know much about science. This is because he found most of his science courses boring and hard to understand in school. He wants to see if it's possible to write about science in a way that makes people wonder about the past of life on Earth and become more interested in the work of science. Part 1, Lost in the Cosmos, by Bryson, talks about how a universe like ours is made. All the matter in the universe is squished into a tiny, empty space, and then there is a rapid growth, or Big Bang, that makes all the space that exists. The Big Bang theory and the inflation theory, the idea that the world is getting bigger, were both created in the 20th century. Bryson talks a lot about how amazing the conditions were that made our world. He says that life as we know it would never have happened if one small thing had been different. Bryson then talks about how big the world is and how far away Earth is from other planets and moons. For example, Pluto is billions of miles away and still can't be found. There are hundreds of billions of other galaxies out there besides the Milky Way. Bryson also says that when we look at the stars, we see a picture of the past because the universe is so big that it takes light years, trillions of kilometers, for starlight to reach Earth. Next, Bryson talks about how our solar system was made over 4 billion years ago when the sun and tiny dust particles collided and formed planets. All of this happened by chance. The carbon dioxide in Earth's atmosphere caused a greenhouse effect that focused the sun's rays and warmed the planet. These factors made the world a good place for life to start 500 million years later. Life as we know it now began 4 billion years ago, when organic chemicals first showed up on Earth. As Bryson starts part 2, The Size of the Earth, he talks about how Newton found the force of gravity and the universal rules of motion in 1688. Newton's discoveries in the 1700s led to a number of difficult journeys around the world that tried to find out Earth's exact size, shape, mass, and place in the solar system. Bryson then talks about geology, which began with James Hutton in the 1700s. Hutton thinks that mountains are made when large pieces of land collide with each other. He's right, but the way he writes makes it impossible for anyone to understand what he's saying. Still, people become more interested in geology, and stone breaking even becomes a popular sport for rich men in the 1800s. They get dressed up and go out into the country to dig for stones. As a result, people start finding dinosaur bones, but experts need some time to figure out what they are and understand that species like dinosaurs eventually die out. Chemistry is the next subject Bryson looks at. He says nice things about Mendeleev's beautiful drawing for the periodic table and Mendeleev's mother for traveling 4,000 miles across Russia to send her son to school. He also talks about Marie Curie's unique accomplishment. She is the only person in history to have won the Nobel Prizes in both physics, for her work on radioactivity, and chemistry, for finding new elements like polonium. Part 3, A New Age Dawns, makes a funny point of saying that by 1900, scientists think they know everything there is to know about the physical world, but their view of reality is about to change in a big way. In 1905, Einstein comes up with the relativity theory, which says that space and time are not fixed but change depending on who is looking at them. Around the same time, Planck comes up with quantum theory, which says that light doesn't move in a single wave but in small groups called quanta. Light, in a strange way, works like both a wave and a thing. Atomic scientists like Rutherford also learn that atoms are mostly empty. Bohr figures out that electrons move around, or appear and disappear, in this empty space and calls this a quantum leap. Bryson then talks about science in the 1930s. At that point in time, women didn't have many options besides acting as support staff to big stars. Henrietta Swan Leavitt, one of these women, comes up with standard candles, an ingenious way to figure out how far apart galaxies really are, even though she can only use smudged photographs. Hubble was able to figure out that the universe is made up of billions of galaxies besides our own, which means it's much bigger than anyone thought. Bryson also talks about how pollution is bad, focusing on lead in the air, CFCs, and the hole in Earth's ozone layer, which means that dangerous radiation from space can now leak into the atmosphere. At the same time, scientists are learning that subatomic particles follow very different rules than everything else in the world. Bryson doesn't understand why scientists come up with such wild and illogical ideas to try to make sense of the world below the atomic level. Superstring theory, for instance, says that very small particles known as quarks move back and forth in 11 dimensions, 7 of which people can't see. Then Bryson talks about continental drift thinkers, who are right when they say that Earth's landmasses are moving, that mountains are made when they crash into each other, and that Earth is liquid below its shell. Part 4, called Dangerous Planet, is where Bryson talks about how dangerous life is on Earth. The dinosaurs were wiped out 65 million years ago by a huge asteroid impact called the KT impact. This was discovered by experts in the 1990s. Bryson says that many meteors big enough to kill all life on Earth pass through its path every day, which means that we are always in danger of going extinct. After that, Bryson talks about nature events. Scientists don't know much about the seismic action inside Earth that causes tremors. It's 3,950 miles deep, but people have only been able to dig a few miles into it so far. Bryson also says that Yellowstone National Park is home to an active supervolcano that is about to explode again and destroy most of the Americas. According to Bryson, people shouldn't be fooled by how calm things have been on Earth's surface so far because anything could happen at any time. In Part 5, The Stuff of Life, Bryson talks about how, until the 1950s, all that was known about the deep seas and the atmosphere at high altitudes came from the stories of a few brave deep-sea dives and experimental balloon flyers. Scientists have learned since then that Earth's atmosphere is made up of layers and that there is a lot more and different kinds of life in the ocean than anyone thought before. Many countries regularly dump harmful trash into the seas, which worries Bryson, hurting a big part of the carefully balanced environment that keeps people alive. Bryson also says that people can't live for long in deep water or at high elevations because we are ground-hugging beings who can only live in a small part of Earth's environment. The next part of Bryson's book is about the Big Birth, or rise of life. It starts with germs about 4 million years ago, which turned into plants, animals in the sea, and animals on land, like dinosaurs and mammals. Bryson says that life is a wonderful thing and that most of how people live their lives is due to luck and events. Bryson then says that the world we live in now has a lot of interesting variety, but scientists only know a small part of Earth's plant and animal species. This is especially true for places like jungles and deep oceans that haven't been explored much. Bryson talks about cellular life and how the finding of cells in the 1800s made scientists think about inheritance. During this time, Darwin works on his theory of evolution. Darwin says that simpler organisms turned into humans through a process called natural selection. This means that the animals that are best able to survive in their surroundings are the ones that live to reproduce and pass on their traits. Because he is afraid of being persecuted for his beliefs, Darwin hides his notes for almost 15 years before he opens them to the public in 1859. According to the modern synthesis, which was created in the 1930s, genes are what cause inherited features and are the way that life develops. Bryson says in Part 6, The Road to Us, that experts believe ice ages happen when the Earth wobbles on its axis and the summers are too cool to melt enough of the planet's top ice. In a strange way, Bryson says, scientists don't know if the extra carbon dioxide in the air caused by human pollution will cause a harsh ice age or harsh global warming. Bryson is sure of one thing: our lives are on a knife edge. Bryson then talks about the beginning of humanity, which happened about 100,000 years ago. He talks about bipeds, beings that walk on two legs, the missing link between monkeys and humans, and the development of hominids, such as Neanderthals and Homo sapiens, humans. Bryson says that the shocking lack of proof about this time in history is due to the small number of skeletons that can be studied. Scientists can only guess at how humans evolved from apes because they don't know much about the subject. Scientists are still at the start of their trip into the past, and Bryson says that there are still a lot of puzzles to solve about the earliest humans. Bryson ends the book with a story that should serve as a warning about how cruel, stupid, and careless people are, as shown by the huge number of species that have gone extinct because of their actions. At the end of his story, Bryson tells the reader to understand how rare and valuable life is, and that people should be more careful not to put their own or other species' future at risk. Bryson thinks that luck has been a big part of human life so far, but that things will need to be a lot more careful and less careless in the future.
About the author. Bryson was born in Iowa, in Des Moines. Many of Bryson's childhood memories take place in Iowa, and he writes about them in his book The Life and Times of the Thunderbolt Kid. Even though he was interested in writing from a young age, Bryson dropped out of college to travel in Europe. He then settled down in Britain and married a nurse named Cynthia Billen. In the end, they went back to the US for a short time so that Bryson could finish his degree, but they decided to stay in Britain forever. In the 1980s, Bryson worked as a reporter and made his way up to become chief copy editor at the Times and national news editor at The Independent. After that, Bryson started writing memoirs and nonfiction books based on his own life, with humor and cultural history mixed in. A Walk in the Woods by Bryson, in particular, tells the story of his hikes along the Appalachian Trail and how they came to be a societal phenomenon. Bryson's work has won him many awards. Between 2005 and 2012, Bryson won 5 top international science writing prizes for his only book, A Short History of Nearly Everything, which became a worldwide bestseller. Bryson was knighted in Britain in 2006 for his services to literature. In honor of Bryson's writings about his childhood in Iowa, the mayor of Des Moines named October 21, 2006, Bill Bryson Day.
Hope we summarized it fully and you liked it. Please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel so that we are motivated to create more videos.